May 1962. The Incredible Hulk's very first issue comes out, and the world is introduced to the giant green rage monster we all know and love. Well, actually he was gray. But anyway, to say the character of Bruce Banner, also known as the Hulk, has a long history is almost, in a way, underselling it. That's over 60 years of existence, dude. That's kinda crazy. Needless to say, the character's been through a lot. From marriage to widowhood, is that the term? To marriage again, to widowhood again, to space gladiator adventures, and even to straight up dying. But, as is natural for comic book characters unless your name is Uncle Ben, first name Uncle, last name Ben, and even then not really, death doesn't always last. And for the Hulk, this led into a modern day classic of a run and the focus of this video, the Immortal Hulk. But before that, who wants context? So the Civil War movie was coming out, and coincidentally enough, the comics had their own Civil War event lined up to debut at around the same time, a sequel to the original event back in 2006. Even though outside of having superheroes fight each other over ideological differences, there's not much actually tangibly connecting the first Civil War and the second. Civil War II was a free will versus determinism affair, caused by the discovery of Ulysses, an inhuman with the power to predict the future. When Ulysses gives all the major players a vision of the Hulk, Bruce Banner, not Amadeus Cho, who was the actual Hulk at the time, murdering the absolute hell out of all of them, they go to confront him. Which is a good idea, I guess? Wait, why the fuck did they do that? Hawkeye ends up killing Banner with a special science arrow, designed by Banner himself, no less, which is a sign of an extremely mentally well man, and the rest of the Civil War II keeps happening. It ends with Ulysses, you know, the entire reason this game of horse hockey went into overtime in the first place, just straight up fucking off into cosmic beingness. Yeah, he just leaves. What the hell? Thanks for nothing, asshole. But whatever. I'm not here to complain about Civil War II, except for just then when I was definitely absolutely complaining about it. After Civil War II, Banner was dead for a while, and though he was occasionally temporarily resurrected for other stories, his official return wouldn't be until the Avengers No Surrender event, where he realizes proper that he can't die, so he's just gotta put up with living. And that brings us to the actual main topic of this video, for real this time, the Immortal Hulk. Al Ewing, the writer for this particular comic run, is well known for his attention to detail and continuity, and Immortal Hulk is no exception. Characters from the long history of the Hulk mythos are referenced and brought back and written with respect with regards to what they represent and who they are. One of the most notable instances of this is issue 34, which goes over numerous points in the history of the Leader, one of the mainstays in the Hulk's Rogues Gallery, in a manner that connects it all to the overarching plot of the story at hand in what is both an extremely engaging read and an impressive display of continuity knowledge and ability to weld together past arcs. Plentiful, but always functional, use of flashbacks to issues from decades ago play a role in exploring elements of what is actively and presently occurring, whether it's justifying aspects of the narrative, of character motives, or of relationship dynamics. One of my personal favorite instances of this is from issue 48, with direct callbacks to various moments in Betty Ross's life and her relationship with Bruce Banner and the Hulk, bookended by one of Betty Ross's first few lines, well, ever. And in a way that really works, no less. We're shown the ups and downs of their relationship, paired and contrasted with the idea that Banner surely knows what he's doing because he works out at the library, except that line is from the same comic run that showed that Banner hides super secret research under glass beakers. So, take that as you will. Basically, what I'm saying is, the history of these characters serves to enrich the storytelling, and it's through moments like these that it's truly highlighted and brought center stage. Remember when Rick Jones, perennial Marvel sidekick guy, said he wanted to write an autobiography? Well, excerpts from said autobiography are used as narration at one point, and it serves to not only act as a fun little nod to Rick Jones writing what is doubtlessly an incredibly interesting autobiography, because holy crap does that guy get up to some shit, but it also works to create an engaging relationship between the going-ons of the comic in question and the narration, as well as with the history of all the characters involved in an intense and passionate threesome, which is a metaphor that makes sense probably. And this isn't the only time idiosyncratic narration is used to connect what is happening more thematically than literally. More on that in a bit. Even characters related to the Hulk mythos that don't end up playing a major role get, at the very least, referenced or the chance to feature in spin-offs. With all this in mind, you'd think the Immortal Hulk would be difficult for a newcomer to follow, what with all the adherence and references to a 60-plus-year-old history, but you'd be pleasantly surprised. Despite everything, it's easy to follow and stands alone incredibly well thanks to set history being effectively and naturally explained and referenced whenever it's necessary. As a whole, the Immortal Hulk builds off of the extensive lore rather than relying on it, or worse, just straight up ignoring it. In a franchise so old, taking advantage of the history rather than being limited by it only serves to make the reading experience of Immortal Hulk all the better. The only significant thing that really gets full on and explicitly retconned is itself a retcon. Wait, hold on, actually I should explain that. The main version of Hulk that is seen throughout the majority of Immortal Hulk is the Devil Hulk, a version that was introduced in the Paul Jenkins run that ended up getting kind of not retconned into being nothing more than a product of Nightmare in Peter David's second run. Kind of, in a sort of pick and choose for the audience way, I guess. But then, in Immortal Hulk, the Devil Hulk was, unretconned? Retconned? Reconned? Whatever. The Devil Hulk was rendered fully and explicitly extant. Hell, even what pretty much amounted to just a one-off line from Paul Jenkins' run ended up getting repurposed into a major motivator of the leader in the aforementioned issue 34. Yeah, buddy, it really isn't a good time. For either of these guys, evidently. There's also the matter of who the first Hulk that physically appeared, all the way back in May 1962, was. Peter David said it was Joe Fixit, Al Ewing says it's the Devil Hulk. Furthermore, the Immortal Hulk being labeled and treated as a horror comic is, itself, a return to the character's roots as someone who is more akin to a movie monster than a fun hero dude who hangs out with the Avengers and dabs. Being so deeply steeped in horror elements really allowed the comic to stand out from many other comics coming out at the time. In fully embracing horror, you'll actually find a lot of similarities are shared here with a certain other big green dude. Specifically, a swampy big green dude. That's right. Shrek. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing is well known and remembered fondly for going in pretty nutso directions. Directions that went against the all-powerful, at the time, Comics Code. It was an engaging run, exploring gray morality, sexuality, and, well, horror. Alan Moore was writing a book that was initially due to be cancelled, so the dude could do whatever the hell he wanted, and it ended up being a character-defining run for decades to come. Not only does Immortal Hulk echo Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, and I'm not pulling this out of my ass, the director's cut of the first Immortal Hulk issue features notes from the editor that explicitly state that a thought process analogous to Alan Moore on Swamp Thing would be a necessity. The success of Immortal Hulk also, at least in part, stems from one of the same factors that allowed for Swamp Thing to succeed. That is, the writer being allowed to do whatever the hell they wanted. Al Ewing has something of a track record at Marvel that involves having to write a lot of tie-in issues to larger events smack dab in the middle of comic runs, with at least one issue of US Avengers parodying the idea of constant tie-ins, an issue that, fittingly enough, features resident fourth wall breaker Deadpool. That's not to say these tie-ins are inherently poorly written or anything. Far from it, in fact. I'm of the opinion that sometimes they're the only good things to come out of certain events. But there's no denying that they can sort of, interrupt the flow a bit. Immortal Hulk is noteworthy for being completely free of tie-in issues. At least, tie-in issues that are part of the main title. This allowed for the focus to be entirely on its own going-ons and not the going-ons of the wider Marvel universe. But even then, the references to said universe are still present and allow for the work to still feel integrated. Basically, like Alan Moore, Al Ewing was able to do whatever the hell he wanted, and that further contributed to why Immortal Hulk is such a fantastic run. Okay, that's it, that's the end of the tangent. Also, the Immortal Hulk Eventines are pretty good themselves, which is, if anything, just a plus. Immortal Hulk's dedication to their characters and their histories can even be seen in Al Ewing's Tumblr. The most popular of social media, obviously, where he would, during the series' runtime, post old comic panels alongside commentary and organizational tags related to themes and concepts that would play important roles in the overall story of the Immortal Hulk. And all of that is without getting into the respect paid to the main man himself, Bruce Banner. For a while now, the character has had dissociative identity disorder, though it was referred to as the now outdated multiple personality disorder when the diagnosis was first made canon. But how this was treated and written varied in quality at best, if it was explicitly acknowledged at all. Al Ewing, however, not only acknowledges it in abundance, but writes the character and his system with nuance and depth, and they're all given their own chances to develop and grow. Bruce Banner's past as a victim of child abuse is also written with care, and made an important part of the overall emotional core of the story, a core that is made all the stronger by effective use of narrative tools like... drumroll... Immortal Hulk's got a lot of motifs, and all these motifs only serve to make the story stronger and more cohesive, connected, all part of a whole. These motifs also emphasize certain themes and ideas. I mean, I sure hope they did, they're motifs for a reason, and they allow for certain messages to come through in a manner that feels effective and natural. There's a lot of verbal motifs, or, well, as verbal as a motif can get in a silent medium. Dialogue that gets repeated over and over in different contexts, but consistently carry the same thematic weight. I take it personal, a symbol of the Devil Hulk's genuine love for Banner, and consideration. Even after eating a guy, he makes sure to grab some clothes for him later. Aw, how cute. Ignore the arm. The idea of being hurt and hurting others, inadvertently or not, is another big one. Hulk hurts, all the time, always. Just by existing, he suffers and causes others to suffer as well. Always and always. Representative of the commentary on the status quo, which I'll expand on in a bit. Of persistence, repeated ideas, things happening over and over again. It's all there, and it adds to the emotional core of the story as well. Of a story of people suffering and, despite everything, wanting to do good. Another one is Hulk, a symbol of identity and selfhood, which, in turn, plays with a motif of shifting perspectives and interpretations. A motif most symbolized by the phrase, "What do you think?" A phrase that bookends the Immortal Hulk run, no less. Mirrors and how they show the face you don't always want to see are another recurring element. This, in turn, plays into themes and ideas of fully facing who you are rather than hiding, or growing from what you started out as, were perceived as, and wanting to be better. Joe Fixit states himself that he started as a kid's idea of a man, someone who hurts people back, someone who dishes out the pain as much as they take it, before realizing that's not who he wants to be. All of these motifs and symbols and their repetition work with one another in tandem, creating a web of themes and ideas represented efficiently and succinctly with just a few words. Not only do they serve as a broader exploration of all these ideas, but they serve as motivators and points of development for the characters themselves. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, it's all connected, and it's all connected in a way that allows for a more cohesive narrative that makes every moment feel important to the story at hand. And that's not even all of them. There are just so many efficient motifs and symbols, and they're all interwoven into the narrative in a way that feels natural and makes the story as a whole stronger, more impactful, and more cohesive. TV tropes would call them arc words. They're a through line, they pack a punch, they communicate so much with so little. As Betty would say, so we say less and say more. And what about parallels? A big one that gets a lot wrung out of it is the one between the Hulk and the Fantastic Four, a parallel that even gets carried over into Ewing's Defenders miniseries. It's cosmic rays versus gamma rays, it's a happy family versus a dysfunctional one, it's exploration of the unknown, a journey into mystery versus a bomb going off, a tragedy. As above, so below. Which is, hey, yet another motif present in Immortal Hulk. The other big one is a more theological parallel, but I'll get more into this one later on. Comics are a unique medium, combining visuals and the written word to create something new, and Immortal Hulk makes incredible use of both. Right off the bat, only 3 issues in, we see a unique and engaging Rashomon-type story, taking advantage of different art styles to represent different perspectives and viewpoints, while being written in a manner that emphasizes these differing perspectives, flip-flopping between entire genres of comic writing. Not only does this issue focused on different points of view play effectively into one of the bigger themes of this run, that is, matters of identity, perception, and what it means to be as you are, it's also just an engaging and well-written romp into the mindsets of more typical Marvel Universe citizens. Between scenes, narration is a connective tissue, with lines overlapping in meaning and word choice, making separate scenes feel connected and cohesive in a way beyond just existing in the same story. One of the more notable examples of this sort of glue between scenes is issue 9, where basically every other page is a scene change, paired with different artists working on each page depending on whose perspective we're in. Here you'll find effective writing and dialogue that links each of these new pages thematically and narratively on top of taking advantage of the contrast between art styles that create a divide. This sort of narration to lend sense into scene changes is not unique to Immortal Hulk, certainly not, but it is the combination of making effective use of the art and guest artists with a good, solid core of writing that highlights how Immortal Hulk as a whole is able to take advantage of the unique aspects of its medium. This happens frequently throughout Immortal Hulk. In general, guest artists are used well and often as a signifier of a different kind of perspective, such as in, again, issue 34, or issue 14 for a Betty Ross-focused issue. It's an engaging use of the specific language of comics, only so effective due to the synergy between the art and the words, though that's not to say you can't achieve similar effects in other mediums, and it, again, plays into themes of identity and perspective. The first few pages of Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics specifically refers to comics as juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence, indicating that words themselves aren't even strictly necessary. And in Immortal Hulk's King in Black tie-in, which, as established earlier, is blissfully free from interrupting the flow in the main title, Ewing shows this off himself, writing a completely wordless story, save for a single "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" and the ending title in quote. And also, like, the names of things in the story if you want to be pedantic, and I don't. The medium of comics is a versatile one, and there's no doubt that Immortal Hulk takes full advantage of it. Other more technical, for lack of a better word, aspects of writing, such as pacing and character voice, are also all played pitch perfect, creating what is just generally a work of writing that's just good. Al Ewing writes for each issue to be worth the $5 you're dropping, not just for the trade. Each individual comic is a development. Character voices are distinct, development is noticeable and thoughtful, and even things as on the surface simple as emphasis on certain words is used effectively and helps greatly with flow and understanding. A litany of foreshadowing and nuanced writing allows for rereads to be worthwhile and involved on the part of the reader. This is just one example of many, but not even 15 issues in, and out of 50 that's relatively early on, the question of whether or not God has a Hulk is asked. And it's a pretty significant question asked by the narrator of the relevant issues at the time, but it's not something you'd think about after encountering it within that contained arc. And come issue 50, holy shit, God sure fucking does. Have a Hulk, I mean. Politics? In my Marvel comics? It's more likely than you think. But for real, you have things like Joe Fixit out and out saying trans rights are good, an acknowledgement of white privilege, the Devil Hulk explicitly calling out human society for things like poverty, billionaires, nukes, and bigotry, and having an entire arc dedicated to calling out the commercialization of nostalgia by having it be weaponized. And that last one, from a company associated with Disney, the king of commercialized nostalgia? I don't know about you, but that seems pretty ballsy to me. Uh-oh. It's not just that these political statements are present, though. It's that these political statements and commentary very much tie into the larger themes and meta-commentary of the story itself. They're not there just to be there. They're there to play a role in character development and thematic exploration as well. Even the notion of anger, a major part of Hulk's character and, consequently, the character's identity, is highlighted as an important part of justice and righting the wrongs of human society. During that arc I mentioned, like 2 seconds ago, about the commercialization of nostalgia, the more abstract ideas surrounding identity and perception are played with, since this big white furry is doing his thing via mind control, and are, in turn, explicitly connected to trans identities through the character of Charlene McGowan, who is able to overcome this mind control due to her own sense of self, a sense of self that, as a trans woman, she has decided for herself. It's things like that, for me, truly elevate the political commentary present in a way that aids both the storytelling and the wider thematic explorations present in the narrative as a whole. More generally, the intersection between body and perception is another recurring motif. Joe Fixit is in banner form for most of the run, finding it a body that doesn't suit him. He's supposed to be a Hulk, after all. But even so, Ben Grimm, another character who has had body image issues in the past, still recognizes him as a Hulk. It's not a perfect one-to-one parallel for a variety of reasons, but the emotional core of it is still there, which I guess is kind of the point of metaphors and allegories anyway. Bodies are also taken over frequently throughout, most notably by the leader, but Doc Samson and Walter Lankowski also do a switcheroo, and Rick ends up merged with that poor American football kid. Bodies get mixed up, they don't always fit, and certain forms characters take on affect how others perceive them. Betty Ross as Red Harpy and Banner's response to it being a notable example. Again, this all loops back around to what Immortal Hulk explores when it comes to identity. Ideas of the status quo are given both a political weight in the form of human society, which we sure do live in, haha, funny joke, and a thematic weight in the form of meta-commentary on the state of the status quo in comics themselves. And, like I've said before, it's all just so strongly connected that all these elements elevate and strengthen one another, rather than existing separately. Another big and broad theme that Immortal Hulk delves into is... Early on in the run, ideas and discussions of what hell is and what the devil is are explored and presented, and, in turn, compared and contrasted against what the Hulk is and what the Hulk can potentially represent. This is kind of a very quote-unquote big idea, but it's all showcased in a manner that engages rather than obfuscates. These discussions are, naturally, paired with the Hulk and friends, in the loosest sense of the term, going to the below place, which is basically just ultra mega super fucked up hell where a big green gas guy and shells or cloth of those who have passed away are found. The Hulk, which can also be defined as, outside of Marvel comic terms, an old ship stripped of its fittings and permanently moored, often used as a prison, is compared to said shells, also explaining why Gamma mutates, aka Hulks, aka shells, go to this mega hell when they die, which is, in turn, compared to the idea of God's face turning away being a representation of God's anger, which is itself notably paired with never seeing Rebecca Banner's face at any point during the run. This all comes together to ask the question of if God has a Hulk. Satanic archetypes are also discussed during this arc, from being the accuser to the adversary in relation to God, and again, these archetypes are compared to the Hulk himself and what he represents. An accuser, a breaker of worlds, chaos itself? Or maybe, in the immortal words of the big guy himself, Hulk is just Hulk. These theological ideas and themes, as they are explored, simultaneously play a role in the meta-narrative of Immortal Hulk, which I'll go into in a hot second. But ultimately, the effectiveness with which they are employed creates a thoughtful work that leaves readers with a lot to chew on. All these questions and discussions surrounding these theological ideas run back around to connect to the explorations of identity and perception. What does it mean for the Hulk to embody certain satanic archetypes over other ones? What, in turn, does it mean for the Hulk when he is given a choice? What do you think? Hey, remember Job? From 5 minutes ago maybe? And also from the Old Testament? Job has basically everything good in his life taken away by God at the behest of Satan, who is, in this case, of the accuser archetype over anything else, to test his faith. When God finally speaks to Job after his trials and tribulations, he answers none of his questions. The final issue of Immortal Hulk, as well as an earlier issue featuring Ben Grimm, issue 41 to be exact, brings this parallel to its logical conclusion, effectively all but stating that Hulk is Job, confronting the capital G God of the Marvel Universe, the one above all, the being that would rather pose questions than answer them. The one above all's appearance in Immortal Hulk's final issue even takes elements straight from the Old Testament God's monologue to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? In Immortal Hulk, wanting to know why is another recurring motif here. Why does Hulk have to hurt? Within this question and the plot of Immortal Hulk, as it involves both the one above all and the one below all, lies an exploration of theodicy, asking and finding reasons for why an all-powerful and all-loving God would allow for evil. What framework is there that allows for the simultaneous existence of God and evil? On a more grounded level, the desire to figure out why is best represented by the character of Jackie McGee, whose main motivation for a good chunk of the story is to seek out answers. Why is there suffering? Why are things the way that they are? If you could ask God these questions, would you even receive an answer? The core concept of Immortal Hulk was already a deconstruction of the idea of the comic book death and its lack of permanence. The idea of the status quo is constantly deconstructed throughout, but the finale brings it in full force. We're presented with the capital G God of Marvel, who allows for suffering, who allows for the Hulk's life to be a tragedy. But why? Well, tragedy makes for an interesting story for one thing, and when the capital G God of the Marvel Universe is very much a Jack Kirby representation, and more generally, a representation of writers and creators as a whole, it's easy to see the more meta connection here. In reality, we can recognize that this suffering happens for the sake of telling stories, but in universe, well, not to be a broken record, but why? Conflicts are stories, and stories are creation, but conflict is also destruction. The one above all calls the Hulk a counterweight, which goes back to the parallels drawn between the Hulk and the Fantastic Four. He exists as contrast, as a living tragedy. But in living with suffering, this means the Hulk can also be given the chance to make a choice with tangible meaning because it is in direct contrast to the pain that surrounds him. The choice to forgive wouldn't even exist if there wasn't something that could be forgiven in the first place. It's all weights and counterweights. When the child Hulk makes the decision to forgive, to offer a hand of mercy rather than strength, a cycle of abuse is, in turn, broken. This moment is a direct parallel to the Devil Hulk telling Banner that he loves him, another moment of a hand of mercy being offered. The huge stakes, the big punch-outs, they're not what's really important. It's the characters and their growth that is. Even the fact that there's no solid conclusion to the problem at hand of the one below all even existing at all works in favor of this meta-narrative. Comics keep going, and stories keep going, and maybe it's never really over. Maybe every fight the Hulk has is the same fight. The implications of character regression and the undoing of character death in comics are all a part of this cycle. Maybe suffering is just story, and conflict is just storytelling, and there's no real escape. Still, despite all this, the open-ended conclusion is ultimately optimistic, which plays more into my secondary point here. In spite of the huge scope with which these stakes exist, issue 25 features a potential future where the entire multiverse is destroyed after all. What is still most important is the heart of these characters, and the firm belief that growth and change is something to be invited and celebrated, and the breaking of cycles even more so. Even smaller moments that are tinged with self-referentialism are showcases of the importance of growth and, consequently, the heart of these characters, such as when Banner mentions in his mindscape that he keeps sliding back into depression, but that he ultimately wants to be saved. What's truly amazing about this work is how all these different ideas, motifs, and themes play into one another and connect in a way that feels natural and that enhances their respective explorations. Meta-commentary slots in nicely with both the political and theological themes, which all fit together nicely with ideas of identity and choice, and it's all just good. It all fits. It's just a good story, man. I don't know. I feel like a broken record, but it really just can't be said enough. Another thing that's kind of tangentially / kind of directly related is how well Banner's backstory involving the Gamma Bomb creation and the saving of Rick Jones fits with the themes consistently at play with his character. Even looking at him purely as an archetype, as a manifestation of two sides of the same coin, or as an expansion and exploration of the Jungian shadow, the Gamma Bomb backstory is very elegant in how it relates itself to these ideas and concepts. It's creating a bomb, a weapon of violence, and it's saving the life of a child, an act of undeniable heroism. Is that how it's pronounced? Heroism? Heroism? I think it's heroism. Yeah, okay, heroism. It's the hand of strength and the hand of mercy all in one. If there was no Gamma Bomb to be tested, or if there's no Rick Jones putting his life in danger, there would be no Hulk. In a sense, both were needed for his creation. Both violence and heroism is given physicality and a place within his flesh. Someone had to build the bomb, but someone also had to save Rick Jones. Actually, while we're bringing that Fantastic Four and Hulk parallel up again, it's interesting that Joe becomes a pseudo-Red Hulk, a Hulk powered by cosmic radiation, seeing as cosmic radiation is associated with the One Above All, in a similar vein to the One Below All's association with Gamma. There's something there too, about growth and cycles and the relationship between the One Below All and the One Above All and the idea of breaking to build anew. I never know how to end these things. I don't know. I really like the Immortal Hulk, I guess. It used the medium of comics well, it was written well, it treated all the involved characters and their extensive histories with respect, everything fit together well. Yes, I'm restating my points like this is a fucking high school essay. Really, at the end of the day, it's a brilliant and character-defining run. One that I'd recommend to anyone, easily. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. For a while now, the character has had dissociative identity. Oh my fucking god, I can't get that right. For a while now, the character has had dissociative identity disorder. Bro, identity! One of my